Hi guys, I'm joined with a very special guest. I have Laura on the channel, who is part of the Rangers Women Supporters Group. How are you today, Laura?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good. So the first question I'm going to be asking is, how did you get into football, and more specifically, why did you support Rangers?
Well, it was when I was really young. It was my dad's always supported Rangers, so he had kind of like tried to take my brother to the football, and he wasn't interested. So then he was like, "I'll take like me to the football," and I just like fell in love with it. And it was like a Rangers game that I'd went to, and then for there, like I've just always watched it, and now there's like the women's team, so there's like even more games to like watch and go to, and it's just kind of grew from there, and I've just always loved football and especially Rangers.
Yeah. So the first kind of questions I have is, so obviously the summer saw a lot of new summer signings. Obviously Malky Thompson obviously announced just before the season ended that he was then leaving Rangers. So then you got a new manager, and then you also obviously had players who left, the likes of Sam Kerr, Emma Watson, Maddie Knopf. Just what would you say about the players who left? It's, I would say, quite important players left, like key players in games especially. Did you think that left kind of a big gap that you needed filled, and do you think the new signings have filled that void?
Yeah, I think obviously I think Sam Kerr was the biggest kind of loss because she was with us for so long, and she was obviously like with Glasgow City before that, so she's like really experienced in that. But it was like such a big move that like she couldn't have turned it down, so it was like a natural kind of progression for her to move on. So I think with having players like Chelsea, Cornet, and Tessa Medag in that in the middle of the park, it wasn't too big a loss. Like it was a loss, but I knew that we would be able to kind of recruit and find somebody. It wouldn't be exactly like Sam Kerr, but it was going to kind of fill in that kind of position. Obviously, Emma Watson has left to go to Man United, and it was kind of again like a deal that she probably couldn't have turned down. Unfortunately, then obviously she got the ACL injury, so she's out. But it's just one of like if big clubs are going to come in for players, they're obviously going to kind of want to move on and test themselves in other leagues. So obviously they're going to go, but I think Joe's came in and she's recruited really well. We've brought like Rachel Rowan, who's kind of similar to Sam Kerr.
Mhm.
Obviously has had some injuries and that, but she's in that kind of mould. And then we've brought in like Rio Hardy, who's just like kind of up with Kirsty Howitt so well that just like you'd think they'd played together for like forever. Michelle Coulson's not really been playing as much as she probably would like, but when the back three are as strong as they are with Scottish like international players, then it's kind of hard for her to break in. But I think Joe's came in and recruited really well, and the team's really gelling well together, so it's good.
Yeah. So obviously Rangers are now at top of the table. How does that feel? Do you think, kind of with last season, it was obviously the last game winner, and you kind of thought with that it could go anyway because obviously the trophy was on its way, and then it was not on its way. Then you kind of thought it was so tense. I quite like it when it's the last day kind of decider, so it doesn't make it the last game of the season quite boring game. Um, but obviously top of the table, would you say that's where you should be at? Like, you've gone no games you've been beaten at, which is obviously really good to see. But do you think, kind of, especially with a new manager, you kind of see the new manager usually kind of takes the time to develop the team, get them started. But it just seems to be like you having a season of like dreams, really. Like, after last season, the new manager. What would you think of this season so far?
Yeah, I think we're to be top of the league with the amount of injuries we've had is actually like some feat as well because we've had quite a lot of players come in and then get injured, and obviously, like as you say, it takes time for like the team to gel together, especially when Joe has brought in quite a few new players. But they've all just they seem to have gelled together really well, and I think we should really be top of the league with like maximum points because I feel like we should have beat Glasgow City in that game where we like dropped points against them. But obviously, like we kind of seem to like a draw against Glasgow City, so it's just one of these things. But no, they've done really well, and I think Jo has them playing fantastically for like her first proper manager's job as well. It just all seems to be clicking. It's like beyond what we would probably expected for a new manager and new players coming in.
Yeah, and then talking about that, you've obviously scored 47 goals, which only 11 games in, I would say, is fairly decent. It's a really good tally you've got, and obviously you've also got the two top goal scorers so far this season. Rio Hardy, who I would say was not a surprise because I kind of watched her at Durham and I thought it all depends on how well they can settle in the SWPL because it obviously is a different standard, it's different demand you have to meet. But I would definitely say she's been one of the best signings for Rangers in a while, I would say, personally. But then you've also got Kirsty Howitt, which is now getting the goals I say she would deserve. She's playing that number 9 role really well. So what would you say it's like to have these players that it's not always just kind of the one player scoring, it's maybe two or three, does that help with when injuries come? You can always, if that player gets injured, you've got someone else kind of filling in the role. Would you say it just gives you a sort of, safety that you're going to score? And obviously that draw did come to Glasgow City, but it's always kind of tough games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think having the two up top and them actually working so well because they're used to, both of them are probably used to playing as that like sole striker, but I think they actually work so well together. Like they kind of complement each other because if they're no scoring, they're like assisting each other. So they've just got that like perfect partnership up top, and I think Kirsty would probably say like she's all right, like up top herself, but I think she's needed that partner because she kind of struggles with that, like in seasons past, with like that going deep and having to do all the work herself. Whereas now, like Rio can be going and doing that, and then there's also like Megan Bell or Rachel Rowe in that kind of like 10 position just in behind them. So they're doing some of the kind of like work for them as well, getting assists. Kirsty McLean's there as well, like just picking midfields apart and like getting assists left, right, and centre. The wide players, like everybody's just complimenting and chipping in with goals and assists all over the park. So yeah, it's been really positive.
Yeah, and then you've obviously got kind of the youngsters, who you think. I wouldn't say the youngsters really played a massive role back when women's football wasn't as big. I could be wrong, but I just don't think, that the jump was too big for some players. But obviously, you've got the likes of Jodie, Mia, and Kirsty, obviously one of them getting into the international squads in past camps. Would you say that's also really good to see, the the age range and getting into the women's team, that gives them a lot of confidence. So we do say they've made an impact as well, even though they're so young and maybe inexperienced, some would say.
Yeah, definitely. I think people would say they're kind of inexperienced, but they're now probably the first names on the team sheet at sometimes because they have all played together through like the 14s, the 16s, the 18s. So they're used to playing together, but for them to come in and do so well in the first team already, it's just fantastic, especially like Jodie, Emma Watson, and Kirsty McLean came through together. So obviously, like Emma Watson's already kind of left, but like she had got into the Scotland team as well. And then it's like Kirsty McLean. Jodie's probably not far off it either. It's for the Scotland team, so they're just so talented. I think the Rangers Academy is probably one of the best, if not the best, in Scotland because they just keep producing like fantastic talent, and for them to actually be like in the first team regulars is just brilliant. And I think other teams as well do bring it through youth. Like I think now it's more prominent that like youth players are coming through, but yeah, for Rangers they're just fantastic. It's great to see.
Yeah, it's also great to see for the young ones who obviously maybe have the dream of playing for Rangers. It kind of gives them, oh well, they're doing it and stuff. It gives them. I would say it's really good to see them. Obviously for them on a personal level to get into the first team, but it's also good for the fans that are watching because I remember going to Scotland game against Costa Rica and one of the wee girls was like, I want to be like Emma Watson, which I thought was really heartwarming. Just kind of hearing a wee kid being like, I want to be, and it's always nice to hear that people obviously have role models, but I definitely say it's obviously great to see young ones, and it obviously helps the even younger ones to get into it. So the next thing I have is crowds. You play at the you played at Ibrox 2 weeks ago, I think it was, against Hibs. We obviously
Yeah.
won 7-0. So what are the crowds like at? What was the crowd like at Ibrox, and what would you say the crowds are like with the SWPL games?
I think uh, once we seen the crowd at Ibrox, like when you see it back on the TV, I actually think it was kind of disappointing because it seemed like there was a lot more tickets sold than what like people actually turned up. So I think for the players coming out and seeing not as many fans was probably disappointing. But when you think of where football's like women's football's been, still for them to play at Ibrox and there to be maybe like a couple of thousand there is probably like amazing for like Nick Dock and that to come out. They probably never thought that was going to be like something that was good they were going to see in their career. So I think they are growing, and obviously like at Broadwood, where we play most of their games, like the crowds are slowly growing each week, and I think it's the same in like the other grounds, like at Hibs, at Hearts, at Montrose, that crowds are slowly creeping up, but it's just taking that like clubs pushing games to kind of get more people along. And as you said, like with kids, young girls looking up to players and that, and looking and being like, oh, I want to be like them, and kind of pestering their mums and dads to take them along. It's like just going to keep helping the game to grow. And like if they get see good games at Ibrox, like big wins and that, it's going to make them want to go more. But clubs just need to keep pushing it so that more people know that the games are on first and foremost, and like they're quite cheap, so like it's a good day to go to like bigger grounds, and like it's quieter because it's not as busy as like Ibrox would be for like a men's game. So it's like the ideal opportunity for them to go along and experience like say Ibrox and the other big grounds.
Yeah, I definitely say kind of seeing it. I went to a Hibs game back in 2019, and it was barely a couple of hundreds, and now seeing kind of 15,000, and I don't know, I have an official number that was Ibrox, but there was only like 6,500 at the Edinburgh Derby, and it's just kind of, it's a bit disappointing as well when you see the ticket sales compared to how many are actually going.
Mm.
But I do think especially for the Edinburgh Derbies, it has a lot to do with free tickets. But at the same
Yeah.
time, that has a lot to help because people aren't thinking about the money. But I would definitely say women's games, I've always said, are cheap. You're always in for a good game, no matter if it's top v bottom or a top teams, two top teams playing against each other. But I do think some of it also is down to travel. The women's stadiums, because they're not playing at the men's stadium, it might not be as easy to get to. But I would definitely say if anyone can get to any stadium or like the smaller stadiums, whether you play at Bournemouth or like Meadowbank, just get along to them. I would definitely say kind of
Yeah.
moving forwards. So the next talking point is international players. Obviously, it's the international break right now. The Nations League, you've had quite a few call-ups, a lot for Scotland, which isn't a surprise at the same time. What would you say, kind of having so many international players, like, does that give your team, do you think, more time international as well to then gel as a team when back at Rangers, or do you think it kind of adds to what if they get injured away, or kind of what do you think it's like to have so many international players and seeing them getting the recognition they deserve?
I think they definitely deserve like the recognition. Obviously, like say Jenna, Fife, Nick Dock, and that have been away like pretty much every camp they're away, so it's just like the norm for them. But for the likes of Kirsty Howitt, Kathy Hill, and that getting like their first call ups, that hopefully they're like playing tonight. It's great for them, and it shows that they're like working. They know they're working hard, but it's that like extra recognition of like playing for your country, and I think it's like something that's special for them, special for their families, and that. So it's good, but I think obviously there is also that concern with so many away, and we've also had injuries already, that there is that concern that they could pick up a knock or whatever. But in saying that, they could pick up a knock in training at Rangers as well. So it's just one of the things. But I think it's great, so many being away, and I think it does kind of help them gel and that kind of team bonding and seeing what other managers like do as well, and kind of they can bring that back to Rangers and be like, this manager was doing this and this was quite good, we like this or whatever. And it just helps everybody grow like together and like as a team. And it's just I think it's really good for them. Obviously we've got like Megan Bell away with Northern Ireland, like Rachel Rose away with Wales, but she's not in the matchday squad today for whatever reason. But it's good just to have so many players involved in these kind of setups.
Yeah. So the last thing that we have talked about was the rise of the women's game. Like, obviously, I started supporting 2019, supporting women's football, and just kind of seeing the growth of the game. But I would kind of also then say it's quite disappointing for the Scotland game. Seeing it down in England, like Arsenal sellouts and all that. Do you think a lot of it is to do with like fixtures timing, especially for international games? The Scotland games are usually a Tuesday or like a Wednesday. Do you think that has a lot of impact due to how many are coming along to games, especially when they're on like Tuesday nights and things like that?
Yeah, I think it can have a bit of an impact, especially like if kids have got school and that, they're maybe not going to get to go to games that are like on like midweek kind of things. Because I think the game down in Sunderland, the Scotland England game, because it was like a Friday, it worked out perfectly because kids could go because then it's the weekend. So there was like obviously that was pretty much near enough. I think it was kind of sold out, So it
Yeah.
does obviously make a difference, and I think even the women's games being on a Sunday could kind of have that kind of knock-on effect as well, because then they're maybe like, oh, it's Sunday, like they're getting ready to go back to school or whatever, so people are getting ready to go back to work, so they maybe didn't want to go. Whereas if there was maybe some games on Fridays and Saturdays, people might go more. So I think that maybe knocks as a knock on the kind of attendances, but then you see how good like the WSL, the championships doing, and they're also when they kind of days. So I don't know if it's just a kind of Scotland still that wee bit behind with like getting the attendances and that, but I think it will get there because it's growing for like when you say like 2019, it's grown from then when like Rangers and that went professional. We went for Auchenhowie to Broadwood already within a few years, so it's getting there, but it's just a very very slow process.
Actually, one last question that I have just thought of on the top of my head was obviously last season you won the Sky Sports Cup at Tynecastle. What would you say? Obviously, you're in the quarterfinal against Birmingham. You've got on the 12th of November. Would you say the main aim for this season would be to get as many trophies as possible? And would you have the confidence to say that you'll win, if not at least one?
Yeah, I think the main aim is the league, obviously, that we obviously need to get either get first or second, but I would hope that we would the position we're in just now would be the league, but I'd hope we retain the Sky Sports Cup and we really need that Scottish Cup as well. So realistically we win all three and we've got a very good summer ahead of us after that. But if anything, a league and cup double would be brilliant. The treble would be absolutely fantastic and Joe would be buzzing, I think, with that in our first kind of managerial season.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining me. It's been a pleasure to have you. I'll just let everyone know that you can follow Rangers Women's Supporters Group on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and give them a wee follow. They're a really good team, I would say, of you guys that go to this Rangers Women's game. You're there week in, week out, and you've done obviously the fundraiser for breast cancer when the game was at Ibrox. And I just want to say you're a great group of people, and yeah, give them a follow if you can. But it's been great to have you, Laura. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.